Have you ever loved someone so deeply that you gave them everything, your heart, your body, your trust, only to have them vanish the next morning as if they never existed? Emily Carter once thought she was living a dream. At the time, she was just 20, a barista working at the Whitestone, a renowned French restaurant in the heart of Manhattan. Every night, she served people who belonged to a world she only saw in glossy magazines, wealthy, elegant, and untouchable. She often reminded herself that she was invisible in that world. Until the night he walked in. Nathaniel Whitmore, Nate, stepped into the restaurant wearing a storm gray cashmere coat, a perfectly tailored suit, and a gaze that made the room go still. He was the heir to a powerful New York law firm, known for his brilliance, his privacy, and his refusal to let his heart belong to anyone. But that night, Nate noticed Emily, the barista, wiping down the counter with a worn-out rag. He ordered a drink, then asked, "If you could escape this world for a few hours tonight, where would you go?" That question opened a night Emily had never dared to dream of. A night where their eyes found each other, where whispered words became promises. And in the quiet hotel room bathed in golden light, Emily believed she had found love, a love powerful enough to change everything. But when the first rays of morning sunlight slipped through the curtains, the bed beside her was empty. Nate was gone, no note, no call, not a single trace. And from that moment on, Emily Carter's life took a turn she could never have imagined. Emily woke up to soft sunlight filtering through the large glass windows. She turned sleepily to the side, expecting the warm embrace of the man who had whispered all night that she was different. But all her hand touched was a cold sheet and deafening silence. She sat up abruptly, the blanket sliding off her shoulders. The luxurious hotel suite now felt hauntingly unfamiliar. There was no sound of running water, no trace of him. Nate's tailored suit was no longer draped over the chair. His leather wallet wasn't on the table, no note, no message. Nothing. Just her, bare and confused, in a room that suddenly felt too big, too quiet. She swallowed her tears and walked toward the bathroom. The mirror reflected a stranger, lips swollen from kisses, eyes shimmering with an unfamiliar light, and faint pink marks on her neck, evidence of a night filled with passion. But it was the expression in her eyes that stunned her. She was no longer the innocent Emily of yesterday. Something had changed, not just because she had lost her virginity, but because she had given her heart to an illusion. The hot water from the shower stung her sensitive skin like needles. Emily closed her eyes, letting the steam wrap around her body, praying the water would wash away the shame burning her from the inside. But each drop that slid down her back seemed to take with it a piece of the magic from last night, leaving her raw and more vulnerable than ever. She put on the same clothes from the day before, now wrinkled and clinging to the scent of a luxurious hotel. Each item feeling like a lie scratching against her skin. As she stepped out of the hotel, the doorman gave her a knowing smile, his experienced gaze making her cheeks burn with humiliation. Clearly, she wasn't the first woman to leave a suite with tear-stained eyes and hurried steps. In the days that followed, Emily moved through life like a ghost. She didn't tell anyone about that night. How could she? How do you explain that you believed in someone just because of a few gentle words and warm eyes? But deep down, she knew. It hadn't been just a crush. 1 week later, she gathered every ounce of courage and went to the address Nate had mentioned over dinner, the Whitmore estate in the Upper East Side. The towering black iron gates greeted her with their cold elegance. The butler, an older man in a crisp black suit, eyed her from head to toe. "Mr. Whitmore does not receive unannounced visitors," he said, polite yet firm. "Please, I'm Emily Carter. He knows me. I need to see him." The man's eyes narrowed slightly. "You're not the first young lady to come here thinking you were special." The words struck like a slap to the soul. Emily stepped back, lifted her chin, and walked away, heartbroken but determined to maintain her dignity. She dragged herself back to her small rented room, each step sinking her deeper into a pit of humiliation. What had once been a modest haven now felt like a prison, the cheap furniture mocking the naive dreams she once held. She collapsed onto the bed, clutching a pillow, and finally let the tears fall, for the innocence lost, the heart broken, and for the foolish girl who believed that one night could become forever. A few days later, when her period still hadn't come, she bought a pregnancy test from the local pharmacy. 2 pink lines. Clear. Unmistakable. Emily slid down the bathroom wall and sank onto the cold floor, hugging her knees. A choked sob escaped her, not just from pain, but from pure fear. How was she supposed to raise a child on her own, on the meager salary of a restaurant server? What would she say to her family when they found out she was pregnant by a man who had abandoned her without a single word? And in that single moment, Emily understood that the night she had thought was a sweet dream had left behind something that could never be erased. A tiny life growing inside her. That night, Emily sat alone in her tiny kitchen, the pregnancy test lying on the table like a verdict. 2 pink lines, clear and undeniable. The world around her spun, and her chest tightened with panic. The first thought that crossed her mind was cruel. I can't keep this baby. I'm too young. I have nothing. I was abandoned. She pressed her palms against her face, trying to suppress the sobs. If I keep it, I'll be a single mother. I'll lose everything. My family will be disappointed. I won't finish school, won't have a career, won't have a life. She thought of Nate, the man who kissed her like she was the most precious thing he'd ever held, and then vanished without a word. He doesn't even know, and clearly he doesn't care. Emily stood up and walked to the window, staring down at the quiet street below. She placed a trembling hand on her belly, still flat and silent. But if I let it go, then what? Will I feel relief, or carry the guilt forever? Will I forget, or will this baby haunt me like a scar that never fades? A single tear rolled onto her lips, salty and sharp. No, she couldn't do it. No matter how scared she was, no matter how alone she felt, she knew one thing with absolute clarity. This child didn't ask to be here. This child was innocent. And in that moment, she made the decision that would shape her entire life. She would keep the baby. Emily Carter packed in silence, bringing only the essentials, a few simple outfits, her favorite books, and an old photo frame of her and her mother from years ago. She didn't tell anyone where she was going, no explanations, no mention of the tiny life growing inside her. She left New York and returned to her hometown, Ashton Springs, Texas, where dusty roads and worn-down wooden houses still carried the scent of childhood. No one there asked too many questions, no one judged, and that quiet acceptance gave Emily the space to breathe, to exist, to begin again. Being pregnant alone was a journey both lonely and sacred. There were nights she cried from fear, not knowing how she'd raise a child, whether she could afford a safe delivery, or who would hold her hand in the delivery room. But there were also miraculous moments, feeling the first kick, hearing the tiny heartbeat during an ultrasound, placing her hand on her belly and whispering, "I'm here." She named her son Liam. He was born in a small-town hospital, with no one by her side except the doctor and nurses. But when Liam's green eyes opened for the first time, Emily's heart knew no one else but this child was meant to be the center of her world. The early years of single motherhood were relentless. Emily worked every job she could find, waiting tables at a family diner during the day, cleaning offices at night, taking in sewing work from neighbors on weekends. Some months, she had to choose between buying formula and paying the electric bill. But never once did she complain. Liam grew up, bright and gentle, a boy with his father's piercing green eyes, but his mother's warmth and quiet resilience. Every time Emily watched him play with secondhand toys from the thrift store, she would whisper to herself, "I made the right choice." She didn't need a man, she didn't need a mansion. All she needed was a child who smiled and called her mom. But sometimes, in the stillness of night when Liam was asleep, she'd stare out the window and wonder, "Do you know what you missed, Nate Whitmore?" 5 years had passed. Emily Carter was no longer the shy girl making coffee in Manhattan. She had become a resilient, grounded, and fiercely devoted mother. At 25, every callus on her hand, every shadow beneath her eyes was a testament to the long journey she had walked with her son. Liam was now 4 years old, a bright, cheerful little boy with soft, curly brown hair and brilliant green eyes, the kind of green Emily could never forget. Every time she looked at him, she saw echoes of the man who once broke her heart and who was also his father. She had returned to New York after 5 long years, not to chase the past, but to build a better future for Liam, a chance at a better school, more opportunities, a brighter life. That morning, Emily walked Liam to a private preschool where they had scheduled an interview. She had been saving for nearly a year just to move closer to this area, hoping to get her son enrolled. After the meeting, they stepped out into the crisp spring air. Liam ran a few steps ahead, stopping in awe before a sleek black car parked by the curb. "Whoa, Mommy, look at this cool car," he shouted. Emily smiled, but as she turned, her smile froze. The man stepping out of the car was someone she had seen 100 times in dreams and in nightmares: Nathaniel Whitmore. Time had left faint lines around his eyes, a few silver strands in his dark hair, but his presence was still commanding, his stance still confident, his aura unforgettable. He was speaking on the phone, voice low and steady, but as he looked up and their eyes met, the world seemed to stop. Emily froze, her heart pounded like thunder. Nate's gaze shifted instantly from composed to stunned, as if he'd just seen a ghost. His phone slipped slightly from his hand and his lips moved, barely forming the name she didn't need to hear to understand: Emily. At that exact moment, Liam rushed toward the car but tripped on the curb and fell. "Ow!" he cried, clutching his knee. Nate reacted instinctively, bending down to help the boy up. "Hey buddy, that hurt? Let me take a look." Liam looked up, wide-eyed, those deep green eyes meeting Nate's with complete childlike trust. "Mister, can you carry me? My leg hurts a lot." Nate was speechless. He looked at the child, then at Emily. He saw those eyes, that chin, that smile. He saw himself in the tiny form of a boy he'd never met. "Oh my God," he whispered. Emily rushed forward, trembling. She knelt beside her son, wrapping her arms around him. "Are you okay, Liam? Mommy's here." Liam nodded, though his eyes were still locked on the man beside him. "Who are you?" he asked. Nate didn't answer right away. He just looked at Emily, his expression full of shock, regret, and the unspoken question. "Is he my son?" Emily slowly stood, holding Liam in her arms. Her hands were trembling, not from fear, but from the tidal wave of memories crashing all at once. Sleepless nights, unanswered questions, dreams that had unraveled. Nathaniel remained still, his eyes fixed on Liam, then back to Emily, with a look that carried both desperation and something fragile. "Emily," he finally said, his voice barely a whisper. Is he my son?" Emily didn't respond right away. She looked at her child's face, then back at Nate, the man who once made her believe in miracles, and also the one who shattered her world. "You want to know now?" she said softly, each word cutting like glass. "After 5 years?" Nate stepped closer. Emily instinctively backed away. "I didn't know, Emily. I swear. I didn't know anything." "Don't swear anything," she snapped. "I went to your house. I rang the bell. Your butler told me I was just one of many girls who came looking for you. You think I didn't try?" Nate went silent. "What butler? When?" "A week after that night," she replied. "When you disappeared without a word. When I didn't know if I'd been abandoned or fooled. Do you even know what that feels like?" Nate nodded, eyes glistening. "I didn't mean to leave you," he whispered. "That night, after you fell asleep, I drove off to get flowers. I wanted to surprise you the next morning, but a truck ran a red light, hit my side of the car. I had severe injuries. I was in a coma for 4 days." Emily froze. She had never considered that possibility. "When I woke up, my father had taken over everything. He arranged for me to be transferred to Switzerland for recovery. They cut off my access to everything. I had no phone, no contact. I didn't know you were looking for me, that you were pregnant." Nate stepped closer. This time, Emily didn't back away. That night was the most beautiful night of my life. Emily exhaled sharply. Everything started to make sense in the most painful way. Emily whispered softly, "When I woke up, you were already gone." Nate closed his eyes as if her words were the final piece of a painful puzzle snapping into place. I returned to the city after 2 years of treatment. The first thing I did was try to find you. I went to the restaurant, asked for your name. They said you'd quit suddenly and no one knew where you went. I thought, you were just another fleeting romance. Emily shut her eyes tightly, feeling 5 years of resentment begin to crack. I thought you used me. I thought I was just one of many girls like me. Suddenly, a small voice broke the moment, making both of them turn. "Uncle Nate, did you make Mommy cry?" Liam asked, his round blue eyes wide with a mixture of suspicion and innocence. Nate knelt down to face the boy. "I didn't mean to, Liam. Grown-ups sometimes hurt each other without intending to, even when they love each other very much." Liam thought for a moment, deeply serious, the kind of seriousness only very young children can muster, then asked, "Do you love my mommy?" That simple question hit Nate like lightning. He looked at Emily, saw the tears shimmering in her eyes. Then he turned back to Liam, took the boy's tiny hand, and said, his voice breaking with emotion, "Yes, I love your mom. I've always loved her. Since 5 years ago, and now, I love her even more." Emily burst into tears, raising her hand to cover her mouth. Nate reached out, gently wiping a tear from her cheek. "And I love you too, Liam. Even though I just met you today, I already love you more than anything I've ever known in this world." Liam still clung to his mother, watching Nate, trying to make sense of it all. "You may not have been there," Emily said, her voice cracking, "but I was. I gave birth alone. I raised him alone. I didn't have a choice." Nate nodded slowly, eyes red. "I understand. And I don't expect you to forgive me today. But please, Emily, let me do the right thing." "The right thing?" she scoffed. "Like you did before?" "No," Nate said quietly. "Differently. Now I know. And I want to be here. Not just for him, but for you." Emily looked at him. Not the flawless man from a fantasy, but a real one, carrying his mistakes and wearing truth in his eyes. "Puppy," Nate crouched down gently. "My name's Nate, and I might be your dad." The boy looked at Emily, as if waiting for her to confirm. "Sweetheart," she whispered and nodded. Liam was silent for a moment. Then suddenly, he opened his little arms and wrapped them around Nate's neck. "Can I call you Daddy?" Nate held him close, tears falling quietly into his son's hair. Emily turned away, blinking back her own tears. She couldn't forgive completely. Not yet. But something had shifted. For the first time in 5 years, her heart was beating not out of pain, but out of hope. In the days following that fateful reunion, everything felt surreal for Emily, as if she were living in a dream with no clear end. Each morning, she would wake up wondering if yesterday had been real, if Nate had truly returned, or if it was just a mirage born from years of buried longing. But then, at exactly 8:00 a.m., came a knock at the door. It was Nate, holding pastries from her once favorite bakery, the one she had only mentioned in passing during their single night together. "I don't know if you still like vanilla lavender," he said, "but I remember you said it made you feel like summer." She said nothing, just nodded and let him in. From that day forward, Nate came every morning. He walked Liam to school, then came back to help her tidy the house, cook meals, even fix the jammed window she had long since given up on. He didn't force his presence. He simply showed up. With Liam, everything unfolded naturally. The boy began telling Nate everything, about his best friend at preschool, his favorite lunchbox snack, even about slipping in the bathroom when no one was looking. Nate listened with a kind of reverence, as if every word his son spoke was a piece of something he'd waited his whole life to hear. Emily watched it all unfold quietly. Sometimes she pretended to be washing dishes, but in truth, she was watching Nate and Liam build towers on the living room floor. Other times, she heard their laughter echo from the hallway as they read stories together, and her heart tightened, not from pain, but from something warm returning to her chest. Still, Emily kept her distance. She didn't let emotions steer her. For too long, she had lived by logic, by self-preservation. One afternoon, as Liam napped, Nate stood by the kitchen window, gazing out at the backyard, where neighbors hung laundry under the golden sun. "I think about what I missed," he said. His first steps, his first words, those long nights when he was sick. "And I can't forgive myself for not being there." Emily said nothing. When I saw him run toward me that day, I didn't feel shocked. I felt recognition, like a piece of me had finally returned home. She turned to look at him. For the first time, their eyes met without anger or tears, just truth. "I don't know if you'll ever trust me again," Nate continued, "but I'll be here, every day, not to make up for the past, but because you and he deserve a family. Not perfect, but real." Emily didn't respond, but that evening, as Nate prepared to leave, Liam tugged on his hand. "Daddy, will you come again tomorrow?" Nate crouched, placing a kiss on his son's forehead. "Every day, buddy. I'm not going anywhere." And Emily, standing at the doorway, finally smiled. Not for pain, but for hope. Liam's 5th birthday arrived with warm summer sunshine and an unmistakable sparkle in his eyes. It was his first birthday with both Mom and Dad planning the celebration together, and to Liam, that was already the best gift. Emily insisted on holding the party in her small apartment, even though Nate offered the garden behind his estate, or to rent out an elegant space. "I want our son to feel like this is his home, where everything begins." Nate didn't argue. He helped her blow up balloons, hang decorations, prep cupcakes, and arrange chairs in the living room. The tiny apartment transformed into a bright, joyful wonderland. Guests arrived, Liam's preschool friends, kind neighbors, even his teacher. The space grew tight, but the warmth was overwhelming. Nate brought a mountain of gifts, and Emily raised her eyebrows in protest. He simply smiled, not to make up for anything, just because he deserves them. A green bicycle, a full set of adventure storybooks, a remote-controlled train, all of it made Liam squeal with delight. But the gift that touched him most was a framed photo of the three of them, taken during a quiet park stroll. Liam hugged it tightly and whispered, "This is my family." When the birthday cake was brought out, Nate gently tapped his spoon against a glass, signaling for quiet. "Dear friends, dear neighbors, today, we're not just celebrating Liam, an extraordinary boy, but something else, something I never dared to dream of." He turned to Emily, his eyes no longer that of a polished businessman, but of a man trembling with vulnerability. "Emily," he said softly, voice just loud enough for her, "for 5 years, I lived with a nameless emptiness. Then you and Liam walked into my life and gave it meaning." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small navy velvet box, opening it to reveal a delicate ring with a diamond that shimmered like a quiet promise. Emily's breath caught. The room stilled completely. "You're the mother of my son. You're the woman who makes me want to be a better man every day. Emily Carter, will you marry me?" No one dared move. Liam held his mother's hand tightly, eyes wide with hope. "Mommy, will you be the bride?" Emily looked at Nate, then at her son. All the past pain, anger, wounds, and years of waiting melted like fog beneath the sun. "It's not a fairy tale," she whispered, "but it's real, and I choose real." She reached out her hand. Nate slipped the ring onto her finger, and the room erupted in applause, laughter, and joyful tears. Liam threw his arms around both of them, giggling. "Now we're really a family." That night, after the apartment had settled into quiet, Emily stood by the window, gazing out at the twinkling city lights. In the bedroom, Liam slept soundly, clutching the framed photo of the three of them. In the living room, Nate was picking up scattered napkins from the party table, occasionally glancing her way with soft, knowing eyes. Emily thought of everything that had led them here, the years she raised a child alone, the nights she cried with no one to hear, the questions left unanswered. And then, today, when Liam called her the bride and wrapped his arms around his father. It wasn't a fairy tale, it wasn't a perfect ending, but it was a real life, with scars, with healing, and with choices. She turned from the window and walked toward Nate. He reached out, took her hand, saying nothing, only lacing his fingers through hers, as if he never wanted to let go again. Emily smiled. "We won't promise forever," she whispered, "but we'll choose this love and this family every single day." And sometimes, that's the most beautiful ending a true story can have. 3 months later, Emily moved in with Nate to the same mansion, the one where she had once been turned away at the cold iron gates, but which now had become a true home. No more distance, no more doubt. Only warm breakfasts, bedtime story nights with Liam, and a love nurtured day by day. She continued her job at the accounting firm while Nate scaled back his workload to spend more time with the family. They went grocery shopping together on weekends, had backyard picnics, and sometimes simply lay on the rug playing Lego with Liam late into the night. One afternoon, as Emily stood watering the plants under the jasmine trellis in the garden, Nate came up behind her and wrapped his arms around her. "I used to think this house would always be just an empty place," he whispered. "But you and Liam turned it into a home." Emily rested her head on his shoulder. "We were both lost, but not anymore." He kissed her hair. "From now on, no more getting lost, only love, only family." In the distance, Liam ran across the lawn, his superhero cape fluttering wildly in the wind, shouting, "The superhero family is here!" Emily laughed, tears falling silently in complete happiness. She didn't need a fairy tale after all, because what she was living was real. It was honest love, it was forgiveness, it was a new beginning, and it was home in every sense, with hearts healed by simply belonging to each other. A few months later, they decided to escape the city and hold a quiet wedding by the sea. They married on a late afternoon. No extravagant gown, no lavish ballroom, just gentle waves, soft white sand, and the few people who truly mattered. Emily wore a simple white linen dress, her hair loosely tied with a sprig of wildflower. Nate wore a white shirt and khaki trousers, holding her hand as they walked down an aisle of seashells that Liam had carefully collected that very morning. Liam served as the honorary best man, and he was the loudest to cheer when his mom said yes. Their vows were humble. No grand promises, no sweeping declarations, just a quiet commitment not to let go, to walk through every up and down together. After the ceremony, they sat on the sand, hand in hand, watching the sunset turn the sky into gold and rose. Emily rested her head on Nate's shoulder and whispered, "We're expecting again." Nate turned to her, stunned. She nodded, her eyes glowing. A new life was growing inside her. He pulled her into an embrace, and Liam ran toward them, wrapping his arms around both. One small, imperfect family made whole in their own beautiful way. The sea breeze danced around them, like nature's quiet blessing, and in that moment, they knew this was no longer the ending. It was the first chapter of a brand new life.